By what name are you known?
There are some who call me... Tim?
Welcome to a brand new episode of Timmy Talks, the channel where we talk old school magic. And today we are back in Leeuwarden, the Netherlands for the Uthden Troll Cup. This is our second episode of UTC 6, the biggest old school Magic the Gathering tournament in Europe and one of the biggest events in the world of old school Magic the Gathering. And today we're going to look at a Finnish player named Raphael. He's playing mono red Atog and he is taking on Mari, and Mari is from the Netherlands. And he's playing a zoo deck with the colors green, blue, red, and a little bit of black, so he's not playing it with white. But more about that, of course, in the deck tech section of the video. Now, before I start with the deck techs, I would first like to point out that, as always, you can also choose to go to the games first, check out the deck techs later. The easiest way to do this is by checking out the descriptions below, because there you will find several timestamps. One of the timestamps reads MTG Games. So if you click on there, it will take you straight to the games. And in that same description below, you can also find a link to the Timmy Talks Patreon page. Because yes, I have my very own Patreon page. And the cool thing is, if you become a patron, you're supporting me as a content creator to make this content for you. So if you like these tournament reports, please consider becoming a patron. But on top of that, you also get access to the Timmy Talks Discord, and you can join in on all the Timmy Talks online tournaments. And of course, you can meet me, you can meet the community. You can all do that in the exclusive Timmy Talks Discord. So if you're, if that sounds good, please consider becoming a patron. Check out patreon.com/TimmyTalks. Okay, and now that you're fully informed, we can start with the deck techs. I'm going to start with the player on the left. That is Raphael. Let's take a look at his Atog deck. And here we see the deck of Raphael, so mono red Atog, right? And of course, when you play Atog, you also play with a lot of artifacts. And maybe first kind of zoom in on Atog and then discuss the artifacts in the deck. So Atog is a creature from Antiquities. It's 1 red and 1 to cast. You can sacrifice an artifact to give it +2/+2, and it's a 1/2, by the way. So you can give it +2/+2 by sacking an artifact, and that is really good in combination with cards like Black Vice, with cards like Ankh of Mishra, and of course the Manifold. And the reason for that is that there are always moments in the game where maybe your Vice is not as useful anymore. Your opponent has, for example, emptied his hand. Well, then you can just sack the Vice to the Atog. So with the Atog, your artifacts always have value. And the same thing can be said for Ankh of Mishra, right? What if you're kind of low and you don't want to take the 2 damage from casting a land? Then you can sack your Ankh to the Atog, give your Atog a boost, deal some extra damage to your opponent, and in your second main, you can just play out that land that you wanted to play out, but you don't have to take the 2 damage. So, Atog kind of gives you control. And then, of course, Manifold. Manifold and Atog is a really nice combination. Manifold, of course, 1 to cast, tap, you get 3 mana. So when you've got a Manifold turn 1, then potentially turn 2, you can have a Suchi. The problem then is, of course, you need to pay 4 to untap the Manifold, and if you don't, you take 1 damage during your upkeep. So you don't want that to happen, obviously, and that's where the Atog comes in really handy. You can use the Manifold for the mana, and then instead of untapping it, you're just going to use it to boost your Atog, give it another +2/+2. And this deck is just full of burn, right? We see 4 Chain Lightning, actually 3 Chain Lightning, not 4. We see 4 Lightning Bolts. We see 2 Disintegrates. And what I want to say about the Disintegrates, they're quite interesting because the Disintegrate combos off quite well with Atog and Suchi, because what you can do is you can first attack your opponent, deal some damage, and then in your second main, if you want to, right, you can sack the Suchi to the Atog. And yes, I understand then that +2/+2 boost is not going to do much, but hear me out. You're going to get the 4 extra mana from the Suchi, and you can pump that into a potential Disintegrate to win the game, right? So these are all, options that you have. So I kind of like that Atog Suchi thing, because then when it's handy, you can choose to sack the Suchi and use that 4 extra mana. You can also, for example, use that extra mana to cast maybe a Triskelion for 6, if you need some extra mana. So I like to have that option where you're kind of in control when that Suchi dies and when you're getting that 4 mana. When we're looking at the sideboard, one of the things I notice is that we see a Sword of the Ages in the sideboard. I just think this is really, really cool. I love Sword of the Ages. Sword of the Ages is a Legends artifact for 6. Yes, it's 6 to cast. Comes into play tapped. When it untaps, you can tap it and sacrifice an X amount of creatures that you control. And then it deals damage to any target equal to the power of those creatures. So one of the things that you can do, of course, is sack all your artifacts to the Atog, attack with a really big Atog. Your opponent probably cannot block or doesn't want to block. takes a lot of damage, and then you can sack that Atog, which is still big until end of turn, to your Sword of the Ages and potentially finishing the game. So I kind of like that. I always think it's cool to see these cards in the sideboard. Another card I really like here is Artifact Blast. Artifact Blast is arguably the best answer to a Triskelion. We see Triskelions a lot in Magic. We see it here in the deck as well, 4 Triskelions. And the problem with dealing with this creature is that as soon as it hits the board, you get value, right? It comes into play with 3+1/+1 counters that you can shoot in any direction. So for example, if you disenchant a Triskelion, the opponent can still just hit you for 3 in response, take the counters off, and deal damage. So the cleanest way is just to counter it for 1 red mana, and that is exactly what Artifact Blast does. Okay, so this is the deck of Raphael. Now let's take a look at the deck of his opponent. And here we see the deck of Madi. So I've called it a zoo deck, and maybe you're wondering, isn't the zoo deck typically playing with green, red, and white? Yes, that's true, but this deck is not playing with white, instead it's playing with blue. I still think it's a zoo deck. Why? Because it plays a lot of different creature types and a lot of aggressive creature types, right? We see Script Sprites you want to deploy turn 1, turn 2 you want to have your Argovian Pixies, turn 3 you want to have your Surrendib Djinn, so just a lot of aggression. And to kind of complement that aggressive strategy, he's playing with 4 Lightning Bolts and 4 Chain Lightnings. There's also a Fireball in there. And then, of course, he's playing with all the powered cards, all the broken stuff. You know, he's putting all the colors in there except for white. So I think the strategy here is pretty clear, right? You just want to start dealing damage from an early position. And so many cards here in the deck hurt that it's going to be really difficult for the opponent to deal with, especially when you combine that with a Time Walk, right? Can you see that in a crucial turn when you already have a Surrendib on board? You can take that extra turn, hit him an extra time for 3, then have your direct damage. You know, then maybe you have a Time Twister to refill your hand, or that Wheel of Fortune. I mean, this deck can just be, you know, go very fast and be very aggressive. And in that regard, it's going to be an interesting matchup because Raphael, of course, is also playing very aggressive. And that's the thing with the zoo deck. I think the zoo deck is one of the only like multicolor decks that we have that plays super aggressive, right? This is like a 4-color deck, but it's not control. No, it's super aggressive. And of course, the mono red Atog deck, we see that a bit more often with that, you know, aggressive intention. Then when we're looking at the sideboard, what's interesting here is that he's playing with his Suchis in the side, so not in the main. He's also playing with blue elemental blasts, and of course, those blue elemental blasts are going to be very, very useful. And he's playing with a Falling Star in the sideboard. I wonder if he's going to cast Falling Star. Of course, Falling Star is not going to help him much against the artifact creatures in Raphael's deck, but Falling Star could be quite annoying for Raphael because of the playset of Atogs that he plays. Can you imagine if he has 2 Atogs on the board and, you know, Madi in his turn plays the Falling Star, then he is to decide, okay, am I going to sack artifacts to boost my Atog, making sure that they cannot die from the Falling Star. And remember, you have to do this before you know if the Falling Star hits or not. You just have to make that decision beforehand. You cannot say, okay, in response of you hitting it with the Falling Star, I'm now going to sack. No, you got to do that before the Falling Star is kind of, you know, flipped and hit the targets, you know. So that's just an important thing to keep in mind here if that Falling Star is going to be used. And of course, I hope so. I really hope, Madi, that you're going to board in the Falling Star. It's cool to see people play with these type of cards, and hopefully we get to see it in this match. Of course, not in game 1 because it's in this sideboard. Talking about game 1, let's go to game number 1 between Finnish player Raphael and Dutch player Madi. Here we go. Game number 1, and on the left we have Raphael, that's the player from Finland. He's playing mono red Atog, and on the right we have Madi, who is playing a zoo deck. He's from the Netherlands. I believe Raphael here is on the plate. Let's see what he can do. There's a Mishra's Factory, tapping the factory. Are we going to see a Mana Vault here? There's the Mana Vault. So potentially we could see a Suchi here on turn 2 from Raphael. Let's first see what Madi can do. What is he going to drop here? Okay, there we see a Mox Emerald into a Script Sprites, a 1/1 flyer. There's a City of Brass. Gonna tap the City of Brass. Oh, look at this Ancestral Recall. What a start here for Madi. This is really good, right? Getting all those cards back. Yeah, this is great news for him. I believe he's got 7 in hand now and passes the turn. And let's see what Raphael can do here at turn number 2. Are we going to see that Suchi perhaps, or an Atog? Remember, he's playing with a full play set of both. There is a Mountain. So Raphael, a little bit in the tank here. I mean, if you would have an Atog, you can also choose to go Atog first, next turn another land, and then perhaps play a Triskelion. And that Triskelion can, of course, also take out the Script Sprites. Look at this, we see a Chain Lightning on the Script Sprites. So very aggressive here on that Sprite. And it is dead. But I mean, that does mean that because of that choice, he can no longer attack with the factory. Obviously, he doesn't have a Suchi or else he would have played it out. So yeah, I wonder what other options he had in hand. Maybe he's worried about one of those aggressive decks, right, where we see Giant Growth Berserk on a creature and just dealing a lot of damage out of nowhere. And here we see a Mishra's Factory being played out by Mari. Are we going to see a Serendip Efreet? It's going to tap at least something here. Okay, taking a damage from the city, dropping to 18. Okay, there's a regrowth. Look at that. Should have tapped it differently, actually. Could have done Emerald and Mishra's Factory. Then he would have had his City of Brass untapped to cast that Ancestral Recall. There's a mountain, so I wonder if we're going to see a Triskelion here. So Raphael having 4 cards in hand. Also kind of has a free attack in with the Mishra's Factory. Another great card, also knowing that Mari has an Ancestral Recall in hand here, would be a Black Vice, kind of punishing Mari for drawing all those cards. It's going to tap 2. Are we going to see an Atog here? No, there's a City in a Bottle, and this City in a Bottle is really, really good because it means that Mari's going to lose that City of Brass, and he needs that blue mana to cast the Ancestral Recall. So it's kind of in a pickle here. And remember, Mari's also playing with a full playset of Serendip Efreets that he can no longer use because of that City in a Bottle. So a huge problem here for Mari. And all of a sudden, it's looking really, really different for him. Of course, he was first thinking about using that City of Brass blue mana to just cast the Ancestral Recall, but that's a no-go now because of that City in a Bottle. Has to come up with a different plan of action. And the thing is, yes, you can animate your factory swing in for 2, but do you really want to with the risk of running into a lightning bolt and losing your only land on the battlefield? It looks like he does have another land in hand. That could be the land that he's considering to play out here. But the fact that he needs so much time means that he's in a bit of a difficult situation here. There's the Badlands, tapping 2. Okay, there's a Demonic Tutor. And Mari loves his altars, by the way, also makes his own altars. I wonder what he's going to go for now. It's really hard to tell, of course, if you don't know what's in his hand. For example, if he's got more mana sources, could consider going for a Mind Twist. Could also, of course, consider going for a Mox Sapphire, but I guess he's passing the turn, so he's not doing that. Could have then done Mox Sapphire, tap, draw extra cards with the Ancestral Recall. Another option, of course, is something to destroy that City in a Bottle. But let's first see what Raphael can do here. Ooh, there we saw a Suchi there. So could just play the Suchi and then animate the factory. Choosing not to, though, tapping the factory for mana. So I wonder if he also has an Atog to play, or if he wants to keep a Lightning Bolt open. So quite interesting here. I would have been tempted, of course I don't know the hand of Raphael, but I would have been tempted to attack with the factory, use the other mountain and the Mana Vault to cast the Suchi, also knowing that Mari only had that untapped factory, and Mari is on a lower life total. But again, of course, I don't know what Raphael has in his hand. And now it's, of course, Mari's turn to do some thinking here. And I really wonder what card he looked up with the Demonic Tutor. Perhaps it's the Shatter that he's playing now. There we see a Soul Ring. Okay, look at him go now. And it's a Psionic Blast. Lots of altars here. But yeah, I really needed to get rid of that City in a Bottle, giving him the option to play City of Brass again. I think City of Brass is a really important card for Mari. You know, he's playing a 4-color deck. Really needs the City of Brasses to stay on the table. And we see Raphael, by the way, dropping to 19 because of that damage from his own Mana Vault. Haven't seen a single Atog yet from the side of Raphael. Now remember, Madi still has that Ancestral Recall in hand. Gonna tap one. There's another Manifold. Passing the turn. So again, I really wonder what he's got in his hand, choosing not to attack with the 2/2, right? Very interesting. Would love to know those 3 cards in hand. Now we're probably going to see the Ancestral Recall. There's the Ancestral Recall, so just going to draw 3 more cards. And so far, this first game is quite entertaining. And let's see if Madi can use his card advantage to actually put some pressure on Raphael. I mean, he is playing with quite a lot of creatures himself. Okay, here we see a Strip Mine taking care of the factory. Tapping 2. There we see an Argovian Pixies, so that's a 2/1. And damage dealt to it by artifacts is reduced to 0, and it cannot be blocked by artifact creatures. And I mean, Argovian Pixies is such an interesting card because it doesn't have protection from artifacts, you know. There we see a Lightning Bolt. So that could be one of the reasons, of course, why Raphael wanted to keep red open, just having access to that bolt. He's going to take a damage again from his own Manifold, drop to 18. Going to draw for turn, 3 cards in hand now for him. It looks like Mani has got some more cards, of course. Played the Ancestral Recall twice in this game. Ooh, just passes the turn. That's good news for Madi, bad news for Raphael. Madi on 14, by the way. Raphael on 18. This is game number 1 of a best of 3. There we see a Volcanic Island. Is he finally going to attack with the factory here? Yep, he is going to attack. Probably thinks I've got enough mana. If he plays a bolt, it's not great, but it's not the worst thing either. Tapping 2. There's a Shatter. Okay, taking care of the Mishra's factory. Just a pass, so no follow-up. No Surrender Befried, no Script Sprites, no Argovian Pixies. Just a pass. Now both players are playing with quite a lot of direct damage as well. Another mountain here for Raphael. Only 2 cards left in hand, and there he goes. Playing the Triskelion here, so the 4/4 powerhouse. Or are we going to see a mana drain? That will be quite disastrous. No, we're going to see a Psionic Blast. And this is the thing with Psionic Blast, right? Your opponent can still deal 3 damage to you, and you take 2 damage from your own Psionic Blast. So that's 5 damage in total, and you can see that now dropping to 9. So that must feel pretty bad if you're Madi. Then again, I do believe he had to do it. Of course, a mana drain would have been perfect here, but of course, it's a one-off in the deck. There we see a Library of Alexandria, and now I wonder how many cards he's got in hand. I believe like 4 or something. Don't think it's more than that, but it's hard to see, of course. Now look at this, 2 points of damage for Raphael now because he's got a double untapped Manifold. He really needs that Atog. Tapping a red. Okay, there's a Vice. Yeah, not going to do much at this point. Drawing a card for turn. I wonder if he wants to do anything. So he's got 5 cards in hand. Okay, there we see a Surrender Befried. And this Surrender is quite good because remember, at the moment, Raphael is taking 2 damage a turn from his Manifolds alone. If you then also attack with your Surrender Befried, you're talking about 5 damage a turn. He's on 15. So dropping to 13. Drawing a card for turn, I guess. There he goes. So he really needs an Atog here. Another mountain. Okay, at least he's got 4 mountains to untap the Manifold, but that's, you know, that's not the best option. Best to turn to Madi. Madi dropping to 8. And Madi swinging in here for 3, putting Raphael on 10. There's another Surrender. Oh, a lot of power now coming from Madi. This is a big problem for Raphael. Look at this, using all his mana just to untap a Manifold. Ugh, that's gotta hurt here for Raphael. Still taking the damage. Oh, this is so bad for him here. It's gonna go to 9 exactly. And then next turn, he's looking at 6 more points of damage. This is devastating for Raphael. Now remember, it's just game number 1. 2 cards in hand. And there we see another mountain. Passing the turn. Of course, also 2 damage here for Mari. So maybe if Raphael can find the right direct damage, he could still win it. There's the attack. Raphael dropping to 3. And there's a chain lightning. End of the road here. Game number 1 won by Mari. And now both players are going to dive into their sideboard. And we will catch back up with them in game number 2. Game number 2. Here we go. So Raphael on the play after losing that first game. Let's see what he can do. It looks like he's got some options again. Maybe he's... Oh, he's taking a mulligan. That explains it. So going down to 6. 6 cards in hand here. And there we see the mountain, tapping the mountain. There's a black vice. So there's the vice. And that means some damage here for Mari, who didn't take a mulligan. So he's dropping to 17. And now, of course, if you're Mari, you just want to empty your hand as quickly as you can. Oh, look at this. Black Lotus will get you a long way. Sacking the Lotus here. And, okay, this is a Mind Twist. Again, an altered card, but it's a Mind Twist. I kind of know Mari's alters. He's also the organizer of Knights of Thorn, the oldest Magic the Gathering tournament in the Netherlands. And also the first old school Magic tournament that I that I went to. That was like 5 years ago, I believe. And look at this. No, he's not losing that card, showing the card, but actually he gets to keep that one card. Exactly. Ooh, so that's a little bit of a mistake. And now Mari knows that that vice is in hand for Raphael. But I mean, I don't think it changes too much. I mean, if he can find a land here, he will just do probably land and then play out the city in a bottle. But going for a mana vault here. Finding that card from the top. Yeah, and this is really rough for Raphael. You know, already starting with 1 card less and then having to deal with that Mind Twist that was powered out by the Black Lotus. This is really, really difficult to deal with. Already a game down, of course. So, yeah, the question is, are we really going to see a game number 2 here? There's a Chain Lightning, right? And with the Chain Lightning, Mari's already kind of signaling, you know, I don't want to give you a chance to maybe draw into a Wheel of Fortune. I just want to play as quickly as I can and finish the job here. We see a Mishra's Factory being played out by Raphael. Now, of course, it's Mari's turn again. Can he find another land to potentially play a Surrender Befried, put some more pressure on Raphael's life total? Yeah, Mari on 16 here. And I mean, who knows? Maybe he just doesn't find any more mana sources and just has to pass here. That would be good news for Raphael. No, we do see a land here at City of Brass in the pass. Let's see what Raphael can find. I mean, he really needs to draw the cards, the perfect cards, right? If he wants to get back into this. I think a Wheel of Fortune, if it's not countered, would be absolutely brilliant here. It's going to tap 2, and we're going to see an Ankh. Okay, Ankh of Mishra hitting the board. So this is an artifact that says whenever you play a land, you take 2 damage. This counts for both players. So yeah, this Ankh could be quite painful for Mari. And this is a very old school combo, by the way. Ankh of Mishra and Black Vice. There we see another Chain Lightning. So really starting to just be aggressive here with the direct damage. Raphael dropping to 14. And a pass turn. Now, Raphael could consider playing out the city in a bottle because it will take away the City of Brass here of Mari. I mean, I would consider doing it. I don't know if his other card that he just picked up is even a better option, but I think playing the city now is quite a good option. Because he doesn't have Mana Drain, Mana Open, which is his only counterspell. And you're going to take a land from him. And remember, you've got that Ankh of Mishra, so that means that land destruction becomes even more powerful. So 2 cards in hand here for Raphael. Ooh, another Ankh. Going for the extra Ankh here. Yeah, this game is more tricky than I thought. After that early mind twist by Mari, I kind of thought, okay, it's as good as over. But, you know, Raphael is kind of making it into a game. And I think that Mari is kind of low on lands, or else he wouldn't have played out the City of Brass. Because Mari, of course, knows that Raphael has that city in a bottle in hand. There's another one. Look at that. Tapping 4, taking damage, dropping to 10. There's a Suchi. Yeah, and because, of course, Raphael didn't play out the city in a bottle, he made it possible here for Mari to cast his Suchi. Yes, Mari had to pay 4 life to play out that extra City of Brass and take 2 damage, you know, dropping all the way to 10. But, yeah, now you've got to deal with the Suchi. Yeah, I would really play out the bottle now, right? Untapping the lance again. I mean, if you play out the bottle now, you're going to take out 2 lands of Mari. Yes, you're going to take 4 from the Suchi, drop to 10, but who cares? Going to tap 2. Oh, it's a Shatter instead. Oh, this is so risky. I would have taken the 4, play the bottle, take care of the lands, play the Shatter later, but that's me. You know, it's easy from this point, from my perspective. It's going to tap even more, drop to 8, or we're going to see another Suchi. Another Suchi hitting the board, but I have to say this game is much more exciting than I thought. After that mind twist, I thought it's pretty much over, but it's not. Raphael can still very much win this. He's on 14, Mari on 8. Now do remember, of course, we're playing after sideboarding, so there's a pretty big chance that Mari has boarded in his 2 blue elemental blasts. And they're, of course, great as well to deal with, for example, a Shatter. So again, 2 cards in hand for Raphael. What is he going to do? Finally, we see that city in a bottle taking care of the 2 City of Brasses. And I'm not sure why he's putting it in the graveyard, because it should still stay on the battlefield. That is why City in a Bottle is so incredibly good. I personally, I think it would have been a much better design if it would say, pay an X amount of mana, sack it, destroy all cards from Arabian Nights, for example. Then it would look a little bit more like the Golgovian Silex. But hey, it's old school. There are a lot of broken cards in old school. And I wonder if Mari's going to swing in here for 4. Yeah, of course he is. It's going to drop to 10. Ooh, there's a Chaos Orb. One of the better cards for Mari to find here. And I mean, again, if you're Raphael, what would you do? I mean, you can now swing in for 2 extra damage, put him on 6. Of course, then you take 4 from the Suchi as well. He would drop to 6. It really depends on what cards he's got in hand here. But this is a very interesting match. And I hope, Raphael, that you can take it, because I would love to see a game number 3 between these 2 decks. He's going to tap the Mana Vault. 3 mana floating. Tap the Mountain. Is he going to cast a Suchi here? He's going to play an Atog. Okay. That's actually better than a Suchi in this case. So he still has mana floating. So he's going to use the mana floating to animate the factory. Of course, an attack. Makes absolute sense. I mean, this is really good news for Raphael, this Atog. I think if you're Mari, you want to flip here on the Atog. And then probably if you're Raphael, you're going to gobble up your Mana Vault in response, so you don't no longer take that damage. Mari on 6 cannot really play out any lands anymore. Remember, there's a double Ankh on the battlefield. He is going to flip. And now Raphael has to respond. He has to respond right now. He has to eat. He's not going to eat up the Mana Vault. This surprises me. Does it mean that he's got maybe another Atog in hand and he wants to keep that Mana Vault? This really surprises me. Very quick flip, by the way, by Mari. There we see a strip mine. Ooh, but then he would go to 2. That is a hefty price to pay. You would be tempted to go strip the factory or maybe the only red source. Yeah, perhaps you want to go for the red source because then he can no longer bolt you. Anyway, gonna attack first. That's kind of the easy step here, I guess. Although maybe you want to keep it as a blocker. There's so many questions here in this game. Both players on 6 now. So both players on 6. Untap, upkeep. Take a damage from the Volt. I really would have eaten the Volt. Gonna drop to 5. Does he have another Atog in hand? I wonder. Now also remember, Madi has an untapped volcanic island, so that could indicate that he's got a blue elemental blast. But anyway, you're too low to think about that stuff now. If you have the Atog, you gotta play the Atog. I mean, he could also attack here with the factory, put Madi on 4, then take one more hit, but then he's gonna die to his own Volt. He has to do something. What a close match here. Raphael, 2 cards in hand. Is there an Atog in that hand? That's the big question. Atog would be a really, really good card to play now. No, passes the turn. Oh, then I think it's almost as good as over. And now the question is, if you're Madi, do you want to take the risk? You can go strip mine, go to 2, strip the factory, attack for 4. But if then, of course, Raphael has direct damage, so animating here. There's a lightning bolt, though. Yeah, this seems to be the end of the road. Going to go to 1. Then he's going to die to his own mana Volt, I think. Madi passing a turn, untap, upkeep, and that's it. Gonna die here. I really wonder what those 2 cards in hand are. Just 2 mountains. Ugh. I know it's easy, of course, from my commentary position, but I would have definitely sacked that mana Volt to the Atog. Would you have won? Probably not, but you get some more breathing space. You know, you could have had an extra turn, an extra top deck, and who knows? Maybe you find the card you need. This is magic. You can come back. 1 extra turn can mean a world of a difference. Anyway, this was a very exciting match. Thank you, Raphael and Madi, for showing your skills here on the show. And yeah, this was another match played at the Uthden Troll Cup. If you're liking this, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and also leave a like, a comment, and of course sharing it on your social. These things are all for free and really help the channel move forward. And talking about moving forward, you can also become a patron of the show. Check out patreon.com/TimmyTalks. And when you become a patron of the show, you can also get your name into the end scroll, and then you see your name at the end of every single video. What end scroll? This end scroll.
What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? Early in the morning, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, early in the morning. Putting in the longboat until he's sober, putting in the longboat until he's sober, putting in the longboat until he's sober, early in the morning. Way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises. She rises early in the morning. Pull out the plug and wet him all over. Pull out the plug and wet him all over. Pull out the plug and wet him all over. Early in the morning. Way hey up she rises. Way hey up she rises. Way hey up she rises early in the morning. What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? Put in the scouts to the husband, son. Put in the scouts to the husband, son. Put in the scouts to the husband, son. Early in the morning, way hey up she rises, way hey up she rises, way hey up she rises early in the morning.
Igitus figitus sumba kazee.